And thank you guys so much for tuning in to Talking the Walk today. I am here with two awesome people. They're going to introduce themselves. This is my co-host.
Rosalind Perez.
And we are here with
Mr. West.
Mr. Donovan S. West with his lace clothes. Look, he always look like this. This is not for the show. This is all the time. You run into him, he's going to look just like this. So just be prepared. But how are you today?
I'm great.
Thank you, and thanks
Never
for
mind
coming.
what she says about it. It's just a suit. I need this like a mechanic needs Dickies.
You gotta look professional.
That's right. So thank you for coming. Absolutely, and thank you for coming and talking to my kids. One of the reasons why I asked you to come is you've been through a lot of things, but you're doing a lot of things. You've overcome a lot. A lot of times people kind of can stay in that place, but you've overcome a lot and you're helping other people to overcome. So I wanted them to be able to hear a little bit more life. I bring a lot of parents on here, unfortunately, who've lost their children.
Right.
So that's you know,
tough.
you already
I'm
know.
sure,
yeah.
yeah.
So, and they're dealing with a lot. So I appreciate you coming through and being able to speak to them. So go ahead, my love.
I want to know a lot about your work.
Okay.
So what you work at?
I work at an organization. It's a faith-based organization called People for People. And actually this year we're celebrating 30 years in the community. It was started up by Reverend Dr. Herb Lusk. Interesting thing about it is he used to play in the NFL. So he used to play for the Eagles back in the day. And he played for several years, and then he said, you know what, I'm going to leave the NFL. Not because he had to retire or he was injured or anything. He played for several years, and then he followed his true calling, which was church.
Wow.
So, you know, he got his, you know, all his stuff squared away, got ordained, all that other good stuff. And then he became pastor of Greater Exodus Baptist Church. Several years into that, he said, you know, okay, well, church is great, but instead of just providing hope on Sundays, what about the rest of the week, right?
Yeah.
So he created a People for People, which now has a preschool that serves over 150 children, a charter school with close to 600 children in it from K through 12, a pregnancy center called the Hope Center, a fatherhood program that serves over 500 fathers a year and gets them certified in different types of trades. A number of other partnerships with, you know, Project Home, the Salvation Army, all the other good stuff. A banquet facility, a school in Chester called the Frederick Douglass Christian School. So many things. So, so that's the organization, People for People.
Awesome.
Do you know like why it's called People for People?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, that's what it really is. It's people that are for people, right? And that means being an advocate, being a protector, being the person that's the access point, the bridge, you know, the person that assists them, that, you know, that motivates them. So these are people that are for people, which is important.
So I actually have a question off of what you just said when she said people for people. You've been through a lot of different things as far as that. Have you kind of, before we jump into it, but have you kind of seen some of your life experiences to be able to help the people? Because you know God will heal us to help us to help people. So do you feel like that has helped you to be able to help people?
Absolutely. I think often when I talk about, you know, the programs, that's one thing, but the people inside the programs, right? The people that we actually serve. You know, I'm not your average COO that just sits in my office somewhere shooting emails and that's it. I like to actually get in front of the people. I need to get in front of the programs and our managers and our people, our line staff, and really get a sense of what they're going through. So when I do that, I really get the most out of the organization myself as someone who, you know, knows what it's like to live in a shelter, someone that knows what it's like when, you know, to be on public assistance. As a matter of fact, let me show you something. This is actually totally unscripted. So
yeah, it is.
it's kind of crazy. So in my wallet, right, forget all the credit cards, that's all nice, but something to just remind me of just how crazy it was for me when I started out, right?
Carry that.
When I was a kid. Look at
Wow,
that.
yo.
So if you don't know what this is a food stamp, okay?
Wow.
And a food stamp is before, you know,
The EBT card.
EBT cards and all that stuff. But this is an old school food stamp that I keep in my wallet.
That's good.
And it's just a reminder at the end of the day. So, you know, yeah, I got those, you know, credit cards and all that other good stuff, but never ever forget
That's right.
where you come from,
like
right?
that.
So yeah, when I look at the people we serve at the end of the day, I look and say, well, it wasn't too long ago that I was in those situations, which allows me to, you know, to lead with compassion.
What made you join this company?
Man, my pastor actually is the same guy, Herb Lusk. So many years ago, I was chasing somebody in the church, you know, you know, so this girl I was dating said, hey, you need to go to church. So I said, fine, I'll go. And I went into this church and I heard his story. And I said, you know what? Here's the story of a guy who like was much more than an athlete, right? Who had a calling. And despite what the world said that his real calling was, he actually knew what it was. And so that's what, really got me. I was saying, dang, that's me. Everyone wanted me to just play sports or do this, but there was so much more inside me that I wanted to do.
Right.
And so when I saw him, I was like, wow, this is the guy. And I don't know if he's going to be my pastor, but he at least needs to be my mentor. Well, it happened to be both. So that was many, many, years ago.
So that's not something you just thought when you was younger. Is your pastor that made you think like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to help people.
When I got out of college, one thing I wanted to do first of all, when I was leaving college, my last year, my best friend was murdered, and his twins, they didn't have a father any longer, right? So instead of me going into law school, which was really where I was going to go, I actually went in a different direction. I learned about insurance and investments and all these other things, and so I basically got the whole hood insured. Everybody I knew, all my boys, cousins, all the hustles, everybody get insurance. And so as person by person, friend, sometimes family or whatever, someone died, I was thinking, well, at least there was a check at the end of that, right? So that's the kind of space that I went into. But then I started to get a little bit more into not just about those that are going to die and all that other stuff, but those that are living. So I started teaching financial literacy and doing a lot of those types of little workshops in people's living rooms and their dining rooms, that type of thing. And so I knew I wanted to help people. At some point, I got tired of helping in that capacity, and I wanted to do more. So I got into social service.
So I have a question before we get to that, because you just shared that, you didn't grow up with a silver spoon in your mouth, and you're not from here. So can you share a little bit about that? Because you talked about how you had friends, but when you came here, it was kind of a rough season for you, which a lot of kids deal with today, which is why I want to talk about bullying is very prevalent in our schools, whether you're from another country or not. So can you share your experience a little bit of when you first got here and some of the things you went through?
Well, being raised practically in this country all my life, but knowing at the end of the day, family-wise, no. Friends that I grew up with in that space, no. So there was always, whether you're talking about a cultural barrier in terms of what you ate or how you dressed or even how you talked, those things always existed. And so that coupled with the fact that also I was this giant in the making, as you can tell. There's nothing wrong with the audience screen. I am really this huge in real life. So at the age of like 12, I was 6 foot, and then, a year later I grew another 4 inches. So I was this, awkward kid who also wasn't, your American kid. So I was going through a lot. And then on top of that, I had a little bit of an anger issue. So I wasn't always nice. When people were picking on me, I wasn't the one to really pick with, but
you also share how you knew that there was something that you needed help, which I think is very big, because a lot of kids, they kind of get labeled the bad kids, this and that, when they're really just crying out for help. So what was it, the deciding factor for you to say like, yo, I need help? Because honestly, at my age, and I'm sure she's young, I wasn't getting it at 5 when you said 5. Mine's one came later. And how old are you now?
I'm 14.
And so this is a way for her to heal. So you say you're around the age of 5. So what was it that showed you I need help? Because I wasn't thinking that at 5.
Well, no, not at 5. I wasn't thinking that either.
Oh, okay, because I'm like, wait.
I was just, no.
Okay.
I was just telling y'all about an episode
Okay.
that, when I was 5, where it was like, it's pretty evident. I need help. Y'all might need to read the book for that one. But when I would say I was in 5th grade when I really had a moment, and I just snapped out. I snapped out. And, there was a situation where I felt like I was being bullied, and so I actually went after the adult that did that, and then I was pinned down by other students, and then that same adult, kicked me in my face, and I was just sitting there like reaming, about to turn into the Hulk again, and that's when I remember seeing my grandfather walking up the street, and I'm just trying to calm myself down, but I couldn't. It was too late, and everyone was like trying to pin me down, literally like these miniature people, and I was turning into the Hulk. So at that point, I was just like, I have to try to get my arms around this. I have to try to control this, because at that moment, I really was just, I shot out. It was a problem. So later on, not too much later on, but a couple weeks later, got in front of a therapist and started talking a little bit more about just what's that process, right? And understanding you have this switch in your head where it's just like, you know what? I don't even care. It's like whatever, right? And then, you right before that moment is when you need to start really talking to yourself and figuring out what's your trigger and how do you start to now, what they call it, it's a metacognitive approach. It's like, what is the things that you do in response to typical things that normally, set you off? And how do you, kind of de-escalate that? How do you, build some barriers around it and also avoid certain situations where typically you just haven't had success, getting out of that situation without snapping, right? And so when you get to know yourself a little bit more, I think it's easier, but the first step is at the end of the day is knowing that it's bigger than you and it's okay to talk to someone, to identify someone that you can trust and you can open up to. And of course, a lot of therapists are out there in that space, but sometimes just starting with a friend, and if you don't have that friend just yet, starting with a journal. I mean, one thing I remember is at the age of 13 and 14, I had a journal and I just found it recently. And so it was interesting, reading about some of my thoughts and what things were happening in my life back then. But a good way to, again, to process your day so it doesn't build up and little things like that, I think, started to help turn me around so I didn't become a statistic.
Yeah, you always gotta open up to somehow, because me personally, knowing how that feels to get bullied, me, like, I didn't open up, and that's like rage just building up in your mentalism, and it's just hurting you even more than what you think. It's like you can't share with nobody, because then they just gonna keep on going sharing, so you gotta like open up to people, to anybody, to anything. Like, you just gotta open up.
I totally agree with you. One thing that's really key is when you hold it in, it's just like that balloon, right? And the problem is at some point that balloon is going to burst, and you're not going to be able to control what it looks like when it bursts or when it happens. And that's the thing that we want to really avoid most of all. So even if you just say something for a couple seconds to someone, whatever, it helps to deflate that balloon just a little bit. And to your point, bullying is crazy. I mean, while I was huge, right, this huge kid, I got bullied often, right, because there's way more to them than it is of me. So everything from being so tall, to my big feet, to how I talked, to what I dressed like, it was always one of those situations where at the end of the day it was me versus the world in my mind, and I needed to find an outlet before it became something too much for myself.
So I'm grateful that you shared that, because this is what this is supposed to be for, where you're able to share what you're going through his life. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one quick break. We're going to bring up a secondary co-host who actually is pretty much kind of in that similar season, so it'll be interesting to hear some of the things saying, then we'll bring you back. So we'll be right back after this break. What's up, everybody? This is your girl, Zarina, and you are here keeping it locked with Talking the Walk live every Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Are you a Christian that feels as though people don't understand you? Are you someone that is going through a lot of situations, rape, abuse, just feeling really rejected? If so, make sure you contact your girl, Zarina Lomax, on Instagram and Facebook. Send me your stories. I would love to have you as a guest. Remember, every Saturday, 9:30 a.m. If you would like to join our studio audience coming live from Venice Island Performance Center, email me or inbox me. I look forward to seeing you then. See you soon. And thank you guys for keeping it locked here. I am now here with Jeremiah, and we are still here with our guest today, Donovan S. West, who shared some nuggets with us earlier that really, really helped us, and hopefully it helped you. So Jeremiah, you're a young man right now. You're in school. You're pretty much in the season of life that he just pretty much talked about. So go ahead, you can ask him what you like to ask.
Well, first things first, I know you were talking about your anger issues and all that, and as a child, well, I still am a kid, but when I was younger, I still have, and I had anger issues. I had a lot of problems with my dad and stuff, and a lot of problems with school. I've been bullied, and it's been hard for me to make friends, and I started making friends and stuff. So life right now is kind of going good at the moment. Obviously you're successful, and what you do is what you love, and I want to do something like that too. But to get there, I'm kind of trying to look for advice, see what I can do, see how I can do it, and I wanted to ask you what can I do and how can I do it to become successful?
Okay. Well, first of all, I received that. Thank you, and thank you also for opening up, for sharing your journey. I appreciate that as well. It takes a certain amount of trust, and then of course vulnerability, transparency, courage, and so all in that little moment. Thank you for sharing that with me and being all those things. So I really appreciate that. And the other part, of course, in terms of talking about I'm successful, I don't know about all that, but it is in my brain as such that I am successful. And that's where it should start. It should start in your brain as, you are successful now. Not you will be, but that's where you have to start. There's a simple saying, you reap what you sow. And the interesting thing about that, we don't talk about the seed. And the seed is really what your beliefs are. What are the things that you believe about yourself? What are the things that you also believe in, And so, when you start talking about what your belief system is, that's really the things you start to sow as you go out about your day. So for instance, you mentioned just now, life is going good for me right now. Just cut off the right now part. You know what I mean? Life will be good for you, period, as long as you believe that and you sow those same seeds. That's the thing that I do. So every morning, literally, because I still have those same challenges too, by the way, with my anger and all that other stuff. It hasn't left me. It's just, if I were to look at, life as a plant, and one part of the plant is rose and the other plant is a cactus, and the cactus represents, anger, and the rose represents, a more positive and optimistic way to look at life. I would just say that they both still exist. They both are still living. One is just going to bloom more than the other because I'm watering that plant, right? And so I'm going to water the roses because that's the space that I want to be in. I want to smell the roses. I want to actually enjoy life. I want to, say all the time that life is good. And so it starts with me believing that, and then my energy, right, which is actually watering that plant, is going to be based off of how I feel about everything overall. Does that make sense? So the first step is that say to yourself that you are successful. I am successful. You successfully communicated to me your journey and where you are and asking for advice. Most people don't do that. Most people actually, they hide to themselves and don't talk to anyone. And so part of being successful is the ability to communicate. The other part of being successful is being courageous in your communication so that you can be transparent, because the more you're transparent, the more information myself or other professionals can share with you that actually is going to be a good fit. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It's like going to a doctor and you don't really tell them what's wrong. So how can that doctor actually really help you? Does that make sense? So congratulations again on communicating courageously and being transparent so that you can get as much information as possible. So there's a lot that you're doing right now just by being here that actually qualifies you for being successful. You just simply have to see it. The other part about it now is you understand that it is a journey, and the one part that I would say about your journey that you just have to really focus on is the discipline. The discipline to just continue regardless of temporary setbacks, regardless of a grade that you may get, regardless of a fight you may get in, regardless of that. It doesn't matter. That's just part of your journey. It's about you getting up, not how many times you fall down. Okay? Does that make sense? And so when you start thinking about, well, what particular business do I want to get into, or job do I want to have, or businesses do I want to have, it's really about some planning. So what do I want to do? What are the things that I'm passionate about, that I feel a certain sense of purpose? And start writing those things down, documenting it. What you don't document is just a thought, right? And a thought is really just a dream until it becomes a plan, but it doesn't become a plan until it hits paper or in your computer or a tablet. Does that make sense? Yeah. Start put pen to paper. Start typing it up or whatever. What's my plan going to be? What would I like to do? Start doing research on it, And then the most beautiful thing about today in 2019 is the fact that you can be like 9 out of 10 things now. You don't even have to wait, so you can actually start studying and getting into that space where you now become what they call a subject matter expert on the areas that you have some interest in and that you have a passion for. So just do the homework because once again, many people, they like, a particular job or business that they want to get into, but let's be honest, we can't live an Instagram life. That's just, that's just a segment. That's not real life.
Yeah.
The real work comes in what you do in between those pics, right?
So I have a question based off, two things I heard when you said it was, write the vision, make it plain. We love that, but it's something that we use repetitively, but it's very true. And because you spoke about that earlier, but also you stated earlier that you had a journal and you just recently found it, which was around the age that they are now. So what advice, he asked advice for him, but what advice would you give yourself basically seeing where you are now, if you could talk to your 13, 14-year-old self that probably thought that the whole world, was against them still, and just seeing how God has used you, and even right now to help him, what would you say to yourself? Because you've done a lot of great things.
Well, I mean, the first thing I would say is that it's never that bad. There were things I read in my journal where it just seemed like, things are so dark and heavy, and it's just like, man, they never gonna like me, or I can never just get whatever. And what I realized is that what I was writing was becoming my life. Like I was actually the narrator for my story.
Yep.
So it just kept a cycle of negativity until I had to stop it. So,
That's a good point.
Mel Robbins talks about this. She's a person that you should look up. She talks about the RAS, which is the reductive activation system. It's a lens in your brain where basically it's based off of your belief system, basically. So for instance, or the things that you believe in, the things that you like. So for instance, when you first got those sneaks, did you notice that there was so many other people had those same sneakers? Did you start noticing that? Like as you walked around, he's like, oh my God, I see these sneaks everywhere. Did you notice that? The reason why is because in your brain there's a lens. It's called the reductive activation system. And what that does is it basically identifies things that you like, that you're interested in. And so it's the same thing when it comes to positivity. If you like positivity, then you'll start to seek those same things in your day and in your future. But if you're focused so much on the negativity that's happened in your life, then guess what? You're just going to keep seeing that. And that's just that's the reality of it. So for those out there that are, they don't really get into the philosophy of, believe it, if you believe it, you can achieve it and all that. There's an actual function, a scientific component in your brain that acts as a filter that supports whatever it is that you believe to begin with. So change what you believe, and then you can actually start to achieve those things, live those things out. The reason for that, again, that RAS, that reductive activation system, is because your brain can't process all that we naturally see. So, just the same way that Z is wearing her royal blue today, she's going to notice how many other people today are rocking royal blue. Or when you buy your first car, you're going to notice how many times. It's just the way our brains are. We have natural filters. So I would say to myself, it's really not that bad. And don't get into, just reiterating how bad it's going to be, right? That's a fear, right? False expectations appearing to be real, right? So it's a fear. What the next moment is really depends on how you decide to describe it. Really, that's it. When they talk about half empty versus half full, right? When you're looking at a glass, both people are right. The difference is look at their faces when they're describing it. When you look at the face of the person that's saying this is half full, they're a lot more pleasant, optimistic. And when someone says it's half empty, they're like, don't be that person, right? So both are right, but which one is actually going to have a more productive, fruitful, joyful, experience overall? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Did I answer your questions first
Yeah,
of all?
you did.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
During your anger issues, when you were in school and stuff, when you said you had got into that one situation where you had the altercation with the teacher, and that you seen your grandfather, your relationship with your grandfather, how was it? Was he like a mentor or?
Man, that's a rock. That's my rock. I get all emotional just thinking about him because he came over to this country and he held us down. We were in the shelter. We were just, what's happening? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Looking at my mom, she's struggling. Looking at my brothers, they're like looking at me for some help. And then my grandfather comes over, and he's almost like in his retirement. And here he comes over now to just kind of steady the ship. And so as bad as it was, and we're just looking like, this guy just comes in with steady hands. And that's my ultimate mentor. So a lot of times people say, well, Wes, do you even have an emotion? Do you, it's steady hands. I'm the one in the operating room that's just steady hands because that's the guy that showed us how to handle things in crisis with those steady hands. So when I saw him coming up that street as I was out of control, and I just saw he didn't try to run or anything. He just, with his walking stick, just walking up like, and that's an image that unfortunately, while it was not my proudest moment, I just recall him even in crisis, just knowing, how he was going to handle it in certain things. And so that's someone that I look up to. And, when you start talking about the anger issue and emotional intelligence, right? That's the thing you want. You want to be able to say, you know what, whatever I'm going through in this very moment, I can see my way through this. Like, it's going to be okay. And kind of talk yourself down from those normal reactions that you've had in the past.
So before we take a break, I want to make sure that he's able to answer your question. Did you have another question before we take a break? 'Cause I kind of feel like you two like have like similar stories. Which is kind of like, yeah, I can do. And I just to like what he said, just to give you kudos, it takes a lot to do this. I wasn't doing this at your age. I was holding in, like he said, we was fighting, cursing people out, doing everything else. So just understand that even though you might, like he said, you might feel like it's right now, like it already the fact that you are admitting that you need help, the healing process has already began, which is why God has sent him here. So you definitely can answer one more question before you take a break. But I just wanted to give you kudos because it takes a lot to do that. I wasn't doing it.
I don't have any other questions. I'm sorry. But,
Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. We're going to bring up our previous co-host. Make sure, tell people where they can find you.
I have social media, Facebook, at Jeremiah Figueroa, Instagram at 3300.j, and that's basically it.
Okay. So y'all make sure y'all support him, and if y'all would like to connect with him, please do so, because there's a lot of young men that are not crying out for, or not saying that they need help, or not asking for any resources. So the fact that he is, if you are a resource, I'm asking you now to share it instead of the end of the show, because you never know somebody's watching. So we thank you. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Into your heart, as you heard him say, you know, he didn't even expect to be doing this, but he had a mentor, which is one of his pastors. So maybe you never accepted into your heart. Maybe you have, and you may be kind of falling away from him as she shared that transitional. Maybe you feel like, why God sent me here? Why am I going through these things? I can't make any friends, but God loves you. The Bible says that he sticks closer than a brother. So if you haven't accepted in your heart, you can simply say, Lord, I'm a sinner. I invite you into my heart. I thank you for Donovan's story, and I thank you for his sacrifice. I ask that you would come into my heart, and I give you my life. Help me to trust you and walk this out with you. And I thank you for his courage to be able to find myself today. And it's just simple as that, where God simply just wants you to use your story to help somebody else. He didn't know that his 13, 14-year-old self would be sitting here helping her, helping me, helping you, as well as helping Jeremiah and so many others that this is going to get to. So please understand that no matter what it feels like, you can make it and you can see it through him. So did you want to go ahead and close this out?
Yeah, where we can find you.
Find me right here. I'm just joking. You can find me on Instagram at Donovan S. West, DONAVAN S. West. Also on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn. Also, young people, you need to get an account on LinkedIn as well, so that you can build up your professional portfolio and get it out there as well, not just Snapchat and everything else, but so that's real official. So you can catch me that way. Also, you can you may catch me on the radio as well on Sundays, Boom 103.9 from 8 to 9 a.m. I'm often on the radio as well with Tiffany Bacon.
Okay.
Oh, you with Tiff? You are with Tiff. Okay. And where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at sys_.queen.
Don't y'all forget the underscore and the dot.
Yeah, you got. Well, as soon as you put SYS, it's going to be right there. You're going to see my picture.
Okay. And you can find me on all avenues of Rena Lomax. As he said, you can find me here. I always say you can find me in the land of the living, because I am clear that I'm going. So you'll find me there when it's time, when God calls me home. But we also hope that you found yourself in whatever we said today, whether you choose to follow Christ or not. We just hope that you understand that you can heal, and your pain and whatever it is that you're going through will definitely be used, despite if you see it now. If you take a look back and write this down, as he said, you take a look back maybe a month from now, a week from now, God will definitely show you that he is using it despite of what it looks like. So we thank you for watching. I thank you guys both for coming today. You did an awesome job. Thank you so much. And we'll be back next week.